The horizon drifted silently in the vast emptiness of space, its engines flickering weakly as if struggling to stay alive. Captain James Reynolds stood on the bridge, arms crossed, staring at the control panels. Something was wrong. This warship was supposed to be a gift from the Galactic Alliance, a gesture of goodwill. But Reynolds knew better. No one gave humanity anything for free. The ship was old, yes, but age alone couldn't explain why half its systems were failing. "Status report," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. Lieutenant Carter, the ship's tactical officer, tapped on his console. "Engines are unstable. Shields are at 20%. Weapons, barely operational. Sir, it's like this ship was meant to fall apart." Reynolds narrowed his eyes. "Meant to." Vasquez, the chief engineer, cursed as she slammed a wrench against a console. "Captain, this isn't just bad maintenance. Someone did this. There are power fluctuations all over the ship, and some systems are completely disabled. I found cables cut, circuits rerouted. And that's not even the worst part." A chill ran through the crew. "Go on," Reynolds said. Vasquez exhaled sharply. "There's a virus in the AI core. Someone programmed it to shut down our life support and disable our defenses when we enter combat." Silence filled the bridge. "So, the Alliance gave us a death trap," Carter muttered. "They never expected us to fight back." Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared across the ship. "Incoming ships," shouted Ensign Patel from the sensor station. "4 unidentified vessels, closing fast." Reynolds turned to the main display. 4 sleek, black warships appeared on the radar, moving in a tight formation. They weren't broadcasting any identification codes, but their intent was clear. "Hostile?" Reynolds asked. "Very," Carter confirmed. "Weapons are armed. They're expecting an easy kill." A transmission came through. A deep, mocking voice filled the bridge. "Humans, such fragile creatures. Did you really think the Galactic Alliance would let you rise? Your time in space is over. Your ship will be your tomb." Reynolds clenched his fists. So it was a setup. The Alliance never wanted humanity to have power. This ship was a trap, and these assassins were here to finish the job. But they had made one mistake. They assumed humanity would go down without a fight. "Vasquez, how long until we can restore control?" Reynolds asked. She wiped sweat from her forehead. "I can purge the virus, but it'll take time. Weapons are offline, shields are weak, and our engines might shut down at any moment." "Not good enough," Reynolds said. "We don't have time. We need something now." Vasquez hesitated, then took a deep breath. "There's one option, a hard reset of the AI core. It'll wipe out the virus, but we'll lose all automation for a few minutes. No shields, no targeting, nothing." "That's suicide," Carter protested. Reynolds didn't flinch. "It's our only chance. Do it." Vasquez ran to the console and initiated the reset. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the ship went completely dark. The hum of the engines died, and a terrifying silence took over. Then the enemy ships fired. Energy blasts slammed into the hull, shaking the horizon violently. Sparks exploded from consoles, and warning lights flashed across the bridge. "We're sitting ducks," Patel shouted. "Hold on," Reynolds said, gripping the captain's chair as the ship shuddered again. "Come on, Vasquez. Hurry." Another blast hit, sending a shockwave through the ship. The crew held their breath, knowing that one more hit could tear them apart. Then, suddenly, the ship roared back to life. "AI rebooted," Vasquez yelled. "Systems coming back online." Reynolds wasted no time. "Fire all thrusters. Get us moving." The horizon jolted forward, narrowly dodging another blast. Shields flared to life, absorbing the next round of fire. "Target their lid ship," Reynolds commanded. "Firing." Carter responded. A barrage of plasma bolts erupted from the horizon, catching the enemy by surprise. The first ship's shields buckled under the unexpected assault, and within seconds, it exploded in a brilliant fireball. The remaining 3 enemy ships hesitated. Their easy prey was fighting back. "Vasquez, how fast can you upgrade our systems?" Reynolds asked. She grinned. "Give me an hour, and this piece of junk will be a monster." Reynolds smirked. "Then let's survive for an hour." The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: the horizon was no longer a helpless trap. Now it was a weapon. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The enemy ships regrouped, their sleek black hulls gleaming against the darkness of space. They had expected an easy kill, but now the horizon was fighting back. Captain James Reynolds watched the tactical display, his mind racing. They had taken out 1 enemy vessel, but the horizon was still badly damaged. Shields were weak, weapons were barely functional, and the enemy wasn't retreating. "They're adapting," Lieutenant Carter warned. "New formation. Looks like they're planning a full-on assault." Reynolds nodded. "They want to overwhelm us before we can recover." Patel, evasive maneuvers. Vasquez, status on those upgrades. The engineer's voice came through the comm, strained but determined. "I've stabilized the power core, but our weapon systems are a mess. Whoever sabotaged this ship did a damn good job. I can bring something online, but it won't be pretty." "I don't care how pretty it is," Reynolds said. "I need firepower. Now." Vasquez hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "There's one thing. The main cannon was supposed to be a prototype railgun, but it was never finished. The components are there, but the control systems were deliberately fried. Can you fix it? If I bypass the safety protocols?" "Maybe." Reynolds exchanged a glance with Carter. The railgun was a long shot. If it misfired, it could tear the horizon apart. But without it, they were as good as dead. "Do it," Reynolds ordered. The ship shook violently as the enemy opened fire. Plasma bolts crashed into the hull, sending a cascade of sparks flying across the bridge. "Shields at 10%, Patel shouted. "One more direct hit and we're done." Vasquez's voice crackled through the speakers. "I need 30 more seconds." "We don't have 30 seconds," Carter snapped. Reynolds gritted his teeth. "Patel, full power to thrusters. Get us under them." The horizon surged forward, dodging another barrage of fire and sliding beneath the enemy formation. The maneuver bought them a few seconds, but not much more. Then, "Railgun is online," Vasquez yelled. "But we get one shot. After that, it'll burn out completely." "One shot is all I need," Reynolds said. "Carter, target their command ship." Carter's fingers flew over the console, locking onto the largest enemy vessel. Target acquired. Reynolds clenched his fist. Fire. A deep hum resonated through the ship as the railgun powered up. The lights flickered, and for a second, the entire horizon trembled. Then, a blinding streak of energy erupted from the cannon, slicing through the void like a spear. The enemy command ship had no time to react. The shot hit dead center, tearing through its shields and armor like paper. A second later, the ship exploded in a massive fireball, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The remaining enemy ships hesitated. Their leader was gone. "That's right," Reynolds muttered. "Run." The last 2 ships turned and vanished into the darkness. Silence filled the bridge. "Did we just win?" Patil asked, disbelief in his voice. Reynolds exhaled. "For now." Carter let out a nervous chuckle. "Sir, that was insane." Vasquez's laughter crackled through the comms. "Damn right it was. That railgun was never supposed to work, but hey, guess we just built the most dangerous cannon in the galaxy." Reynolds sat back in his chair. The horizon had survived. But this battle wasn't just a random attack. The sabotage, the ambush, it was all planned. Someone wanted humanity gone. And now, They were going to regret failing. Vasquez, Reynolds said, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Let's finish this warship. If they wanted us weak, they're about to get a hell of a surprise. The horizon was broken, battered, and barely holding together. But soon, it would be unstoppable. And the galaxy wasn't ready for what was coming next. The bridge of the horizon was eerily quiet. The crew was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. The battle had been won, but it was only the beginning. Captain James Reynolds stood at the center, staring at the damage reports. The ship was barely holding together. Power was unstable, shields were fried, and the railgun, though devastating, was now completely offline. "We need repairs," Lieutenant Carter said, her voice low. "We can't fight like this again." Reynolds nodded. "I know, but we don't have a choice. Whoever sabotaged us, whoever sent those ships, they won't stop." Vasquez's voice crackled through the comm. "Captain, I've been digging through the ship's logs. I think I found something you're gonna want to see." "Go ahead." "There's a hidden transmission log," Vasquez said. "Someone on this ship sent a signal before we left the station. A coded message." Reynolds stiffened. "You're saying we have a traitor?" "Looks that way." Silence fell over the bridge. A traitor. It made sense. The horizon wasn't just attacked, it was set up to fail. Patil clenched his fists. "Who would do this?" "That's what we need to find out," Reynolds said. He turned to Carter. "We need to decode that message. Now." Carter nodded and got to work, her fingers flying over the console. Seconds turned into minutes. The crew watched in tense silence. Then the screen flickered. A voice recording played through the speakers. "They don't suspect a thing," a cold voice said. "The ship is crippled. It won't survive the ambush. By the time they realize what happened, it will be too late." Reynolds felt his blood turn to ice. He knew that voice. It belonged to one of his officers. "Commander Hayes," Carter whispered. "One of their own. A trusted officer. A traitor." Reynolds clenched his fists. "Where is he now?" Patel checked the ship's internal scanners. "He's in the engineering bay." Reynolds turned toward the exit. "Let's go." The crew followed, their steps heavy with fury. This wasn't just sabotage. This was betrayal. And now, it was time for justice. The doors to the engineering bay slid open with a hiss. Captain Reynolds stepped inside, his boots echoing against the metal floor. Behind him, Patel, Carter, and Vasquez followed, their hands resting near their weapons. The bay was dimly lit, the hum of machinery filling the space. At the far end, standing near an open panel, was Commander Hayes. He didn't flinch as they entered. Instead, he slowly turned around, his expression eerily calm. "So, you found out," Hayes said, almost amused. Reynolds' jaw tightened. "Why, Hayes? You were one of us." Hayes sighed, shaking his head. "You don't get it, Captain. This ship was never meant to succeed. The moment we left that station, we were marked for death." "Marked by who?" Carter demanded. "The Galactic Council," Hayes said, his voice cold. "They've always feared what humanity could become, so they decided to cut us down before we could rise." Patil clenched his fists. "And you helped them," Hayes scoffed. "I didn't have a choice. They made it very clear. Either I ensure the horizon is destroyed, or humanity pays the price." Reynolds' eyes burned with fury. "And you believed them?" Hayes took a slow step forward. "Look around you, Captain. This ship is barely holding together. You might have won that battle, but the war, it's already lost." Vasquez pulled out his weapon. "You're wrong." Hayes smirked. "Am I?" Then, without warning, he pressed a button on his wrist console. The ship trembled. Alarms blared. The engine core's warning lights flashed red. "He's triggering a meltdown," Carter shouted. Reynolds moved fast. In an instant, he lunged at Hayes, tackling him to the ground. The traitor fought back, but Reynolds' fury was stronger. With a swift punch, he knocked Hayes unconscious. "Shut it down," Reynolds barked. Patel and Vasquez rushed to the controls. Carter's fingers flew over the console. The core was overheating. If they didn't stop it now, the horizon would be torn apart. Come on," Carter muttered, sweat dripping down her forehead. The ship groaned. The temperature climbed. Then, the alarms stopped. The core stabilized. The ship was safe. Reynolds stood, breathing hard. He looked down at Hayes, now bound and unconscious. "He was wrong," Reynolds said, turning to his crew. "The war isn't lost." Vasquez grinned. "Damn right it's not." Reynolds gazed at the stars beyond the viewport. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The horizon floated in the vast darkness of space, silent yet alive. The ship's systems were stabilizing after the near meltdown, but something still felt off. Captain Reynolds stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the endless stars. Vasquez broke the silence. "Sir, we've locked Hayes in the brig. He won't be a problem anymore." Reynolds nodded but didn't look away from the viewport. He was just a pawn. Someone bigger is pulling the strings. Carter's fingers danced across the console. "I've been scanning for any signals, transmissions, anything that could link him to an outside force. So far, nothing." Patel frowned. "That doesn't mean we're in the clear." As if on cue, the lights flickered. A strange hum vibrated through the ship. The crew tensed. "That's not normal," Carter muttered, running diagnostics. Vasquez reached for his weapon. "Tell me that's not another sabotage attempt." Carter's screen suddenly filled with static. Then, a deep, artificial voice crackled through the ship's speakers. "You should not have survived." The crew froze. Reynolds turned sharply. "Who the hell is that?" Carter's hands moved fast. It's coming from inside the ship." Patel's eyes widened. Impossible. A chilling realization set in. The horizon wasn't alone. Someone, or something, was already on board. The air inside Horizon grew thick with tension. Every crew member felt it. The invisible weight of an unseen threat. The voice that had spoken through the ship's speakers still echoed in their minds. Carter's fingers flew across the console. "I'm trying to trace the source of that signal, but it's bouncing around the ship like a ghost." Vasquez gripped his weapon tighter. "Then we hunt it down the old-fashioned way." Captain Reynolds nodded. "We move in teams. No one alone. If something's on this ship, we find it." As they moved through the dim corridors, a faint clicking sound echoed from the vents. Patel aimed his rifle toward the ceiling. "Tell me you hear that." A sudden clang made everyone jump. The sound came from the engine room. Reynolds motioned for silence. They moved carefully, weapons raised. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing darkness. Carter switched on a flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. Then something moved. A shape, tall, thin, metallic, stepped into the light. Its body was a fusion of wires and alien plating, its eyes glowing a cold blue. Vasquez whispered, "What the hell is that?" The machine's head tilted as if studying them. Then the ship's speakers crackled again. "You were supposed to die with the ship, but now we will finish the job." The lights flickered, and the figure lunged. The battle for Horizon had begun. The mechanical invader lunged with terrifying speed. Vasquez fired first, his pulse rifle lighting up the darkened engine room. Sparks flew as the bullets struck the creature's metallic body, but it barely flinched. Captain Reynolds shouted, "Spread out. Don't let it pin us down." Carter dove behind a console, frantically typing on his wristpad. "I think it's connected to the ship's systems. If I can break the link, we might shut it down." The creature turned its glowing eyes toward him, as if sensing the threat. It raised an arm, and a burst of energy shot toward Carter. He barely managed to roll away as the console behind him exploded. "Keep it busy," Reynolds barked, unloading his weapon into the enemy. Vasquez and Patel fired in sync, but the creature adapted. Its metallic plating shifted, absorbing the impacts. Carter gritted his teeth. His fingers danced across the keyboard. Almost there. A sudden shudder ran through Horizon as the ship's lights flickered. The enemy froze for a split second, just enough time. Now, Reynolds roared. Vasquez switched to high-explosive rounds and fired. The impact blew a hole through the creature's chest. It staggered, its blue eyes flickering wildly. Then, with a metallic groan, it collapsed. The ship fell silent. Carter exhaled, wiping sweat from his forehead. I cut its control link. That thing was never alone. There's something else out there. Reynolds nodded grimly. Then we prepare. If they come back, we'll be ready. Outside the viewport, distant stars shimmered. But somewhere in the darkness, an unseen enemy was watching and waiting.